So a very small amount about me, and those that already know me know I can talk. But I joined Boardroom Advisors, which is effectively business consultancy, which I'll go into in a bit more detail, underselling ourselves a bit there. But having really spent a number of years as a managing director of Martin Luck Group, which is a business supplies company, from print through to furniture through to PPE of all things. Everyone knows what PPE is about now. And also a board director at Vospers. Within both of those regional organisations, I spent a lot of time on business change management, business development, so improving our go-to-market and profitability. So it's quite a wide spectrum of projects. And that organically brought me into consultancy. So I'm going to share this presentation in a way just to keep me on track more than anything. So please bear with me. What I'm hoping to do today really is just give you a brief overview of who Boardroom Advisors are and how we get involved with particularly entrepreneurs and startups, although that's not our sole focus. So the key kind of four main focuses of what we do is that, or what we provide initially is interim directorship. So that's where businesses might have a director of a certain ilk that has left the business they weren't planning for, and therefore we can then drop in someone like a finance director or a sales director into an organisation. We also provide part-time directors, so that's an ongoing commitment where maybe we might give directorship on a weekly or fortnightly basis, as well as actually provide a virtual board if the business requires it. And then we have the typical kind of consultancy. So if that's more project-based, whether that's launching into new areas, whether there's a specific problem in a business, we will go in and then fix that. That's probably quite a small percentage of what we do, actually. And then business mentors, and that includes businesses of all sizes. You know, it's a real key thing that a business founder is quite often they feel very, very isolated, and it's not often they can't often talk about certain subjects, you know, with their team. So to have a business mentor is a very sensible thing to do, and most of the most successful business people around the world have all succeeded because they had a business mentor. So that's what we kind of do. The client sectors we work with are startups. So that's something we're talking about today. Generally, when we get involved with the startup, they would have already started their journey. It would be a group of individuals with a passion or an idea, and particularly in the Southwest, we've seen some fantastic businesses in niche markets develop through the recession, and have done exceptionally well. We get involved with IT. I'm currently working with an IT startup company, and it's really giving them, what I'll talk about in more depth, the experience and the things that we can give them. We also deal with scale-ups and transformations. That's a business that's really committed with growing the business year on year at quite an aggressive rate. And that obviously involves a huge amount of change, which we not only identify, but we support on an ongoing basis. Then you get stagnated businesses, so those that really have got themselves into a rut, and they're not quite sure what to do next. And then towards the end of the process, business exits. And something we're now doing is working with Stephen Scown to introduce employee ownership trusts to businesses. So I think people like Riverford Organics, although we weren't involved with that, they've in recent years become an employee-owned business. And that's something that we help through the commercial and the strategic side of things, while Stephen Scown work on the legal side of things. So the expertise, really, I'm not going to talk through each of these boxes, you'd be glad to know. But because we have a collective nationwide of about 55 consultants, we've got about 12 to 15 in the Southwest. We all come having done business for real. What we aren't are graduates or anybody that's spent their entire lives in consultancy. what we bring is a raft of experience of either of owning, growing, selling businesses, lost businesses, and therefore that level of experience helps to give a depth of expertise to startups and existing businesses. But as you can see there, we really focus on 3 key elements, whether it's strategy, finance, and management. And what we'll always do is find what the client really needs at a particular time. So you won't be lumbered with one consultant through your entire relationship. We could potentially move the right consultant in and out of the client, so they get the right person at the right time. So why use an advisor? So this is relevant for existing businesses and startups. You get a raft of expertise and experience, and that, as I've already said, we've got people from various different backgrounds with lots of different specialities, and we always try and put in the right person. So you get years and years worth of experience, but particularly with a startup, it can be very, very valuable. We often fill a knowledge and skill set gap. So it may be that they know their sector really well, they know their product, and they may know their customers, but they might not have any business skills or knowledge at all. And that's where we would help. As an advisor, because we are third party, we come with a very unbiased viewpoint. And from that point of view, an insider looking in often gives you a very different view of the business. And it's very, very common for us to go in and do a diagnostic on a business and actually establish that the business is focusing on the wrong things, and there's much lower fruit to go and exploit and opportunities that they might not have considered. So that's always a key benefit that we bring. Believe it or not, mentors like to be challenged. You know, if they are, not mentors, founders like to be challenged. Many of the clients I deal with want to be accountable to me because they don't often have that. If they're running a small business or a medium-sized business, they're not accountable to anybody else. And we all need chasing up on things. We all need challenging on certain aspects. And actually it brings a really healthy dynamic to a growing business. Mental support is really key. From my point of view, we actually have a well-being expert within our team. And I think that's absolutely key. If you're growing a business really quickly, and particularly at the moment, to have someone to talk to who may have gone through the challenges, who may be able to help with you with some of the problems you may have, is a really healthy thing to do. So if you take any message away today, it would be about finding a mentor, and obviously finding a relevant mentor for what you need. The other thing an advisor will bring is connections, collaborations, potential investors. So boardroom advisors actually have a source of multiple investors inside and outside of the UK, and they are particularly interested in developing startups in the Southwest. And that's something that, from our point of view, gives the investor some confidence in the fact that if we're involved through the life of the contract or the business, it means that to a degree their investment is protected in the fact that they've got somebody with the right knowledge and expertise to maximise the growth of that business they're investing in. So of course that indeed then reduces the risk. The other thing is, because we've lived and breathed business for many, many years, most of us decades, we help clients avoid pitfalls and make the right decision first time. And particularly in these very challenging times, it's so key that you make that decision first time, because you might not get a second time chance, unfortunately. So from that point of view, it should give the business owner some real confidence. And then once we've built a plan, we would then provide additional tools and training to management teams, to their people, and signposts to potential collaborators or specialists in certain areas that they might need. And finally, really the other thing we do is sometimes many businesses of a certain size still don't have a board. They've grown really successfully, but without a board, they often lack strategy and they're not really progressive, or they're not being really tested. So what we find is that we can become the board members. So we would work with the founder and support them on a monthly meeting and become the board alongside them. Again, that's quite a valuable thing to do in a new business, particularly when you can't afford them full time. And that brings me on to the other benefits, really. I've put NED there. That's an often used term, which stands for non-executive director, business advisor. We're pretty much the same thing. But the benefits of us is that you only take us and you only pay us for when you need us. And it's a minimum cost on a monthly basis compared to a full-time hire. You also don't have the risk. You know, a new business, if they're trying to find the right talent, clearly there's always a risk with getting the right person. Now, if your NED or advisor isn't the right person, it's much easier to swap that person out than a full-time employee. Also, the fact that our position is non-permanent. So actually, you only need to pay for us whilst you need us. And we're there virtually. So we will also support via Zoom calls, clearly, and phone calls if you need us in between any regular appointments that we would set out. And I've touched on this briefly. The ability to swap out an expert for certainly a startup is a fantastic opportunity, because you might need finance at the very beginning of the life of the business, but you might need someone that's more involved in business development further into the organisation, or a marketing expert, for instance. So the ability to swap out experts within boardroom advisors is really quite useful. So one thing I would always suggest, there's a number of key questions that we would always ask our clients. And it's really surprising how many founders don't have an ultimate aim. They've grown a business, they've succeeded in it, but you actually ask them, what do they want from this? They have to think about it. So what we try and do is strip things back to the real reason why they're doing what they're doing. You know, what is the ultimate aim? Do you want to be involved with the business within the next 5, 10 years? Do you want to be a non-executive yourself? Do you want to be a chairman? Do you want to go and pursue other interests? And what needs to happen with that in that business for that to actually come to fruition? And also then go into the detail of what success looks like. Quite often businesses judge their success on the profit and loss. What they don't suggest, or what they don't set themselves, is a growth pattern and a number of things to put into place to get them there. And that's what we do. We pull things apart on a full diagnostic, and then we put it all back together again and actually build a plan for the owner to achieve their ultimate aims. And that often gets forgotten in a challenging market, or a business where a founder is often very operational and they're not very strategic. And that's the key thing that we do, is that we make sure that we keep that strategic focus, whilst the business owners or the leadership team focus on the operational elements of the business. So that kind of hopefully gives you an idea of some of the benefits of using an advisor. No matter what their ilk, I would always suggest that if you're running a business, to get a mentor or a number of mentors is a really key element of a successful business. And it helps you keep your sanity, helps you make your decisions first time and make them right the first time. And I think that's me. So I guess, Helen, you're happy to go to questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, you think that's you, but then I'm sure there are questions. I definitely you. Has anybody got anything they specifically like to ask Tim before I jump in? No. I'm sure you've got some questions for him, Linus. I don't know where Linus has gone. It's disappeared again. Well, I was just wondering, Tim, whether the sorts of businesses that you're working with now are the same sorts of businesses that you've been working with over the previous couple of years, or are they changing? Are you getting different inquiries from different types of business? So, I mean, we've had quite a lot of real evidence, not anecdotal evidence, as I said earlier, that there is quite a few new startups, but not necessarily sort of young entrepreneurs coming out of university, but people that have got really quite significant skills and quite often specialists, but they're moving perhaps from an organisation where they've been able to use their skills in a large environment, but now branching out on their own. Are you seeing that sort of thing?
Yeah, it was never, bizarrely, it was never part of the Boardroom Advisors plan to actually work so much on startups. We were always going to go into, existing businesses that potentially had got stuck into a rut, or particularly focusing on scale-ups. But that's an established business. But we've organically started working with more and more startups because they're there. From that point of view, I think quite often, and you see so many in the Southwest where they've got all the right elements to a business where that a business needs now. So it's that quick thinking, it's the adaptability, it's the resourcefulness, it's the collaborative side of things, and which you would have heard me talk about on previous sessions, and we covered yesterday on another session. But generally, they all seem to have those elements to them, and those are the types of people that will thrive. What I'm finding with more established businesses is that they are diversifying. So a key thing, particularly in the impact of lockdown, has meant that, and we kind of touched on this yesterday. I know I was only observing yesterday, but I kept quiet. But what many businesses are being forced to stop doing the things that are time stealers or resource stealers. They're focusing on the thing, or they should be focusing on the things that really drive the profit, or an opportunity that has some longevity to it. So we're finding a shift with our clients in the fact that it's something we help them do, is to look at their current operation or their historical pre-COVID operation, and actually establish, well, out of all the things you do, does that deliver profit where you could actually be doing something else? Or what happens if you start doing this, this, and this, whether it's a new client sector or selling the same things that they already sell into a new marketplace? And we've got an awful lot of those going on at the moment. So yeah, there's a lot of diversification as well.
Tim?
Yes. I hear you. I don't know why I'm doing that.
I turned that off because there's I've got the door open and there's a Lumar or Strimmer or something going off in the background, so I put myself on mute. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm on the steering group for Skills for Plymouth, which is part of the overall Resurgam project that Plymouth City Council have introduced in order to recover. And one of the pillars is the skills. And what we're looking at, as well as different types of businesses, is what's that going to mean in skills? What sort of skills do we need to be looking at in the future? What should we be needing in order for businesses to be successful?
So I didn't quite understand the question.
Sorry, it was just with the changing nature of businesses, as you say, and the people, that the entrepreneurs and so on, but also, I mean, yesterday you referred to yesterday, which is a really good conversation, wasn't it? We had, but yeah. Paul Bird referred to intrapreneurs, sort of people within large organisations that are coming up with new ideas and being creative within an organisation, and maybe starting to, and also those that are being made redundant. There's just so many things happening at the moment within business. Yeah. I wondered if you got any thoughts on the types of skills that people might be needing for the future.
I think the common thing that you see within established and sometimes startups is the lack of management experience. And we've again talked about the change in management. And so particularly with remote workers and things, that's a very different style of management that's required. So to manage that ongoing, it means that leadership teams and management need to be retrained or given some guidance. And sometimes that just lacks. They don't have the ability to be able to make those changes within a business. Also, they need to kind of empower staff better in order to draw those ideas and that entrepreneurial spirit out. And again, not many businesses have got that. Not enough businesses, I should say, have got that. And again, it's a different style of management. It might be a different process. They might need systems to support it. So I think the two key areas that need addressing from that perspective, to answer your question, will be management training and planning. Because it's great having the ideas, but it's the ability to then execute those ideas successfully and actually set timescales and goals, which quite often, and it's very, very surprising sometimes, that you find a fair few businesses out there have been going for a couple of years, that they had an idea, they grew their business, it continues to grow in a good climate, but actually they didn't know what was good from bad. You know, they didn't set themselves those standards. Well, what is good? What does good look like? And where are we going once we've achieved that? So I think there's a raft of management and planning skills that businesses will need to actually grab hold of that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think, again, referring to what you said, but also what Richard was saying yesterday on the Chamber Live, was that having a consultant or a boardroom advisor in place is like having that person that's on the balcony. Rich Adams referred to the need at the moment to take yourself off the dance floor, stand on the balcony and take a look down at the formation that's happening below you. And that's really what you're doing as consultants, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, even on Friday, I had a fantastic example with a client. They're in manufacturing. They want to grow. They've been going for a couple of years. They're probably around about £2 million. But for the last 2 years, he's not made any profit. Well, when we actually pulled the business apart and looked at the processes, their whole pricing matrix was incorrect. So what they hadn't done from the very start is to actually establish the correct way to price their work. So it was no wonder they're struggling to make net profit. Instantly, within 2.5 hours, you found an extra £100,000 worth of business, and that's without even looking at the new business opportunities. And that's a really good example, and that's quite a common thing. That, you know, that third party or outsider looking in is much easier sometimes to give that level of transparency, and particularly with new businesses and founder-run businesses, they're so operational to make things work and make things happen. They don't get time to stand back and actually look at things. And that's something that a business advisor will always do, is to force that strategic time. And if it wasn't for someone like me turning up once or twice a month, they wouldn't be strategic at all. And clients say that. We force them to step away from the coalface and actually look at their business, but we hold their hand whilst doing it.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been in business myself on and off, well, various businesses over many years, and it always pays to take a step away, and particularly with somebody else who's just going to ask the questions. Why do you do this? Yeah, you know, what was the reason that you decided that? And just making you stop and think. Absolutely.
And those questions with a startup, because at the beginning of their journey, is worth their weight in gold. And I've sat with some fantastic business people, and they've got an idea, and then I say, well, why do you want to do that? Have you thought about that? And actually, you could use that, you could apply that in another industry. And actually, again, you ask startups, well, what do you want? What do you want to be? They quite often don't know. And I've had some clients say to us, well, we've not been a business until now, but now we've got traction. Now we're making some money. We now need to think like a business. And that could potentially be 2 years in by the time they get to that stage. So it's really important and, really valuable. If you have somebody like that at the very beginning, then it actually avoids you having to take that journey and learn the hard way. You can short circuit the whole thing.
And as you said earlier, it's all about the bottom line then, isn't it? If you can improve the bottom line. And Stuart and I had a conversation yesterday, following on from yesterday's mornings, but we've had a board meeting today, and what we took away from yesterday morning, and you've re-emphasised a lot of that, it's about the productivity. It's, you've got to take yourself out of some of the processes sometimes and look at them again and think about, how are we going to be more productive? And I think a lot of people are spending time at home without a lot of the peripherals. And I know myself, I'm being much, much more productive than I ever would be if I was in the office, for example. So yeah, I think there are lots of ways to stop, and this is a time to stop and look and have that opportunity to bring somebody else in. So talking about bringing somebody else in, Tim and I rather. Sorry?
I think James was trying to say something just now.
I was just going to say, Tim, because I think it's something that the current climate is probably, forced. But I've certainly noticed on both sides of the scales with my clients that a lot of businesses seem to be looking for that investor, but not the typical equity investor, but the local businessman who's been there, done it, has got a few quids from whatever venture that he wants to pump into a business and actually bring the expertise as well as just the money. And on both sides, there seems to be the businesses that are struggling and need that either expertise and or money. And there's the individuals that are normally quite wealthy in terms of money and experience in running businesses. And there seems to be a lot more of that going on. It's only early days, but there seems to be a lot more of that sort of thing.
I agree. I think there needs to be much more. And that's a big part of what we do is signposting. We might not even get involved with the client, but, because we're exposed to so many different sectors, we get a buzz from just joining those up. But, I think there's definitely space for doing that. We've got one of our business advisors is Stuart Noakes that some of you may know. So he runs Canopy, if you don't mind me mentioning that. I'm sure you don't. But that's they call themselves a tribe, but it's a way of getting together like-minded people, entrepreneurs. They might not even started the business just yet, but it's a fantastic way of building and sharing their knowledge, their drive, and actually energy. And I think there's, and that's why this forum's good. And it's definitely, an area we can expand on in this region. Stuart was talking about the fact that the Southwest is potentially a place that more and more businesses will want to come to. And I think that's fantastic. But it's getting that funding into the government, of course, with some of the changes with Brexit and things, where there is access to grants to help people on. At the moment, most of those have dried up. So it may be private equity is the way forward.
Yeah, and I get the feeling that the reason some of these businesses would prefer that sort of private equity is that the traditional equity investor has got quite a bad reputation amongst a lot of people and a lot of businesses, whereas these sorts of investors don't normally tie them up in the same sort of red tape and agreements that a typical angel investor would do.
No, agreed.
That's great. Linus, did you want to say something? Yes.
Thanks for sharing, Tim. Sorry, I was on mute and had to stop the video earlier. It's actually quite late at my side right now, and I had to finish up a bit of house chores. So thanks for sharing, Tim. Interestingly, earlier when you shared about Riverford, that was and about employee ownership. That was actually a case study that we did in one of our marketing and management courses back in Exeter University. So I think it's something that they're also trying to, that is something that is also spreading around, and something that they're also trying to teach the students about new ways of ownership models. My question would actually be about, you mentioned about how you, as a third party, you come in as a sort of like a boardroom advisor. You come in as a third party. I'm just curious as to what is your thought process when you come into a new business, because different businesses have different complications, and what are the kind of things when you first when you first advise a new business, what are the kind of questions you ask, and what are the things that you try to find out? What's the thought process while trying to advise a new client?
Yeah, well, we use a number of tools, one of which actually was mentioned again in the session yesterday with the business canvases. And along with some of the questions about motivation, we tend to then scope the entire business to try and understand where they spend their time, where the resources are spent. Key thing really is understanding the management team. Who's involved and what are their skills. Are there any gaps within that management team? And then really just refocusing on what the founder actually wants to do. And the key thing is actually just building a plan for them to do that. So a key motivation for them might be that they want to go 3 days a week. We even talk about their income. Well, how much do they want to make? And so many businesses don't do that. Quite often, whatever the founder takes is just a byproduct of everything else. What we try and do is turn it on its head, say, right, what outcome do you want? And then remap it down to, right, okay, what needs to happen within that business in order for that to happen? And then ask the question, well, when do you want that to happen? What's the resulting net profit? Do we need investment? Do you need to go into new market sectors? And actually then just start building that picture, and then build business growth strategy documents, marketing plans, and everything else as a stepping stone to get them there. Because in effect, what happens is with a successful startup is that they'll end up with really nice turnover. They might end up they're not making enough profit as much as they'd like. And actually, something you've seen in Devon and Cornwall a lot through the recession are these businesses growing through the passion for the product or the service. And they get to that point where they then start looking down and they start thinking, well, actually, this is a bit perilous because I haven't got all the structure that I need to make this business sustainable. So what we tend to do is strip that business apart and try and find the gaps within that structure, whether it's process-driven, people-driven, or finance. And then we effectively then put the missing building blocks in to give that sustainability to the business.
Does that answer your question, Linus? Quite comprehensively, I would say.
Sorry.
No, that was good.
No, the more details, the better. I mean, if you're giving me a one sentence answer, then I honestly I will feel hurt because it doesn't sound like you're treating my questions seriously. But thanks for the sharing. It's really quite detailed, and I feel that a lot of times like since you've been in this business since you've been in this sector for so long, a lot of times I feel like it takes experience for you to build up the necessary skills as well. So hopefully this is something that I can also cultivate over the years as when I go out to work as well. Another question I have actually is I am quite aware that I'm the only I'm a student here, so I just wanted to ask if you had any advice for young people who are currently at universities who may or may not want to start their own business, or generally at our age range, what would you advise yourself, or rather what is the advice you would give yourself when you were, say, around my age?
I think you're already doing it. I think networking is key. It's being interested in people that have been and done it before, and taking the good bits. Not all of it will be good, but you know, I think to gain those case studies and build those ideas, so everything that they're learning in university, you can then apply to a real life situation. Sometimes it's not always the case. So I think you're actually doing the right thing. As I said, I went to university, but I never thought of starting to network with notable people or just people in business. And I think particularly in the Southwest, it is very much who you know. And I think all of us down here thrive in the business because we love joining businesses up, you know, one business with another and joining the dots. I think if you start that kind of discipline at university, you know, it took me 20 odd years, not quite 25 years, to learn half of what I know. I think there's sometimes a quicker way to do that if you can absorb case studies and examples from experienced people. So I think that's a really key element to success. Learn from everyone else's mistakes.
Mm. I think you're absolutely right there, Tim. And obviously, I'm going to say that networking is really important. But I know, you know, at the Chamber, networking is important to us, but it's important as a byproduct of having really good events, good information, and engaging speakers and so on, so that you're learning something all the time. From that, naturally, I mean, we've only got a small group here, but I'm sure we've already felt that we've made some good connections. And so I don't think you can underestimate the importance of connecting with different people at any stage of your career. So yeah, I back up everything you say there. I just wondered, Josh, whether you've got anything you would like to say to Linus about any advice you'd give him.
Well, Tim very much said what I was going to say, in that networking is obviously one of the best things to do. It's something that I didn't really get involved in for a number of years working up. I was desk space for a number of years, but I sort of left the networking to the side and regretted it. You know, I think you get set in your ways quite quickly, and even just going to networking events, you get a renewed sense of what you want to do, and especially ideas that you've not thought of, or ideas that you thought of that subsequently have been deemed to not be too good. So networking, just getting everybody's opinion, as many facts, opinions as possible, and then just making your own decisions from there has been key for me. Me thinking that I'm working in the right way for a number of years, when I've listened to somebody change what I've done, even a small amount, and it's helped me immeasurably, over the last couple of years. So yeah, for me, it's just been listening to what everybody else has done who's been doing it longer than me. Not necessarily in my industry, just in general.
Brilliant, thank you. James, have you got anything to add?
Not really. I was just going to pose a question. Probably aim more at Helen, I guess, but anybody really, is that I think one of the barriers, particularly for students and young people starting in business, but even I've seen it from people that have been in the force all their life and then come out and start a business. The barrier is they're scared to get into that networking environment, and it's how we can overcome and get people to overcome that barrier, because I know how I felt when I was first starting out. It was a very daunting thing to do, and I'm sure there's thousands of people that just never get over that barrier. Yeah,
you're absolutely right, James, and I've been there myself. And even now, sometimes when you walk into a room, when you know there's going to be a crowd of people there, sometimes it's still really daunting if you're not sure you're going to know anybody and so on. And there are techniques that you can use to get over that, and maybe that's something we need to be looking at. In fact, we have been talking to somebody who was going to come along to one of our actual Roots events, about the skills of networking. And I think I should definitely get back in touch with her, Olivia, shouldn't we? Because I think it's a really good point, James, that it doesn't come naturally to most people. Most people have to really work at networking, and it gradually becomes a more natural thing. I think even if you're naturally outgoing, garrulous sort of person, networking is a skill as well. You can be talking, but talking about nothing, and you're not necessarily selling or listening or learning anything. It's not about just talking. It's about that whole networking, making that networking environment work for you and for your business.
Yeah, because I've got friends that are fantastic social animals, if I can put it that way, but they are disastrous when it comes to what I call more business networking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm exactly the same. I know lots of people who you think would be perfect in a networking environment, but put them in a group of people and all they'll do is want to chat socially. And so it's it's down to that productivity. It's no good for the business that way, is it? So.
The challenge we find is that a lot of founders of certainly small to medium businesses don't get out of the business because they are so operational that actually, even if they think about going networking, they might not see it as the best use of their time. And quite often, a business founder should be aiming to make themselves redundant from their business, because then they can reap the benefits of their success, and choose how much involvement they want within a more mature business longer term. So it's very difficult sometimes for us and other organizations offering similar things, that to get in front of founders is quite difficult.
Yeah.
And the other fear is that if they thought about it, there's a fear that they're just going to be sold to. And I know the Chamber's very good at kind of try to police that. And certainly things like city conversations, you get the right level of contact there, and it's focused on whatever the theme of the day is. Not many founders don't even take that step, so they wouldn't know that. So it's a way of being able to get in front of those people somehow, because generally they're either struggling to grow a business or keep a business, and suffering in complete silence because they're behind closed doors.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. I mean, networking is so important on every level, whether it's at the top, so something like city or county conversations, whether it's your business leaders, whether it's your business development executives and so on that need to be doing B2B sales. So, some of our crunchy breakfasts and networking lunches and so on might be more relevant for that. What I'd really just like, I've just read James Murphy's comment, sort of working in the business, not on the business. And we hear that a lot, don't we? That everybody's busy paddling away, getting everything done day to day, that they're not taking that time to get off the dance floor and look at it, as we've said before. So it's really important that we do. And by networking is another way of learning. Networking, even if you're just going to a purely networking event where all you're doing, it's still incredibly valuable, but you're just talking one-to-one or maybe having an elevated pitch opportunity. That's still really worthwhile. But I think, what I hope the Chamber offers is that learning platform, that whatever event you go to, you come away thinking that little golden nugget again. We've learned something at least that I can take back to my business. And because I've taken time out of my business, I am actually working on it, not in it. I've taken that time out and I've got something that I can take back and put back into the business. And that's really important if somebody's going to feel that they've taken time away that's going to be ultimately productive and profitable. I'd just like to spend the last couple of minutes, if I may, because we're nearly up for time, just thinking of the future of this Chamber Roots. I know, James Peterson, you were involved originally with this. I think this has been an incredibly good conversation, and I'm really grateful to everybody for getting involved, and I hope you find it's been useful too. But this is the kind of thing that we really want to expand out to more new business people, entrepreneurs, or young professionals, because James at GA, the original idea was that some of your young professionals would use it to start building up their own networks as well.
Yeah, I think going forward, so far the Chamber Roots has really been aimed at entrepreneurs and students, which is fine. We haven't really, targeted the young professionals, the younger people in bigger businesses, if I can put it that way, the people that are young in their careers, but they don't necessarily own that business. But it's useful for them as well. It's useful for all types.
Yeah. So I'd just like to say this is something that is a work in practice, in progress. And Olivia and I are looking at how we can make it work much more effectively as a support tool for so many businesses. And you know, I think in just this last hour, we've learned so much, and I hope that you've got something you can take away from it. But it's something that we need to take on board and progress further so that lots more people can benefit from it. So it's not, we're not looking for membership from it. We're not looking for any income from it. If anything, we probably need some sponsors to try and help us to afford to run them, but that's another matter. So if you've got any ideas or any thoughts and feedback, please do get in touch with Olivia or myself, and we'll put them into the pot, and we'll try and get another one of these together in a couple of months' time, hopefully with a few more people on board. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for joining us. A special thanks to Tim for sharing insight into what a consultant, a mentor, a coach in the boardroom is. And hopefully you found that really interesting, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon.